Hi, everyone. Welcome. It looks like we've got folks joining in, so I'll wait just another minute so that all participants get a chance to join before we get started this evening. Hello and welcome to today's webinar, Food as Medicine, a three-part community series focused on living well and preventing type 2 diabetes through nutrition, cooking, and physical activity. I'm glad you're able to join us for our first session in this series focused on shopping for health. My name is Rebecca and I'm an employee at Comagine Health, where we work to improve health and create a better healthcare system so that people and communities will flourish. So tonight's event is made possible on the next slide through the partnerships and support of Get Healthy Utah, the Utah Diabetes Coalition, the Steering Committee for the Prevention of Diabetes, and Comagine Health. And tonight we've got some feature presentations from the Department of Health, the Utah Department of Health, and the Tooele County Health Department, as well as USU Extension. Before we get going, I'd like to go over a few housekeeping items so you'll know how to participate and have the best experience possible. If you'll go to the next slide, please, Manny. You can listen to this webinar using your computer speakers or call in by phone. Using your computer speakers or headset is recommended for the best quality. At the bottom of your screen, you should see three buttons. To the far left is audio settings, and in the middle, you'll see Q&A. If you click the audio settings, it'll bring up the audio preferences for this webinar, and you can do a test check for your sound and your speakers and your microphone. Make sure your computer's volume's turned up. And while hearing from today's presenters, your microphone will remain muted. After the presentations are over, we'll move into a time of question and answer. However, at any point during the webinar, you can submit questions in that Q&A box. To do that, just click the Q&A button and a window will pop up where you can submit your question. You can submit questions anonymously or to the whole group, and you can keep it open to view the questions from other participants as well. If you see somebody has already submitted a similar question, you can vote on their question by clicking the thumbs up button so that we can focus on the most popular questions first. We have lots of people joining us tonight, and I'm sure there will be lots of great questions. We'll send a follow-up email with responses to some of the questions we're not able to get to during the time we have. And if you happen to have any technical difficulties, we have moderators who can help you via the Q&A box. Tonight's webinar will be recorded. The slides and recordings will be posted on the Comagine Health YouTube channel, and the link will also be provided to you in a follow-up email, which will be sent out approximately 2 weeks after the event. So now that we've covered all the housekeeping items, I'd like to share a little more about tonight's event. So some of you may or may not know that November is National Diabetes Awareness Month. And did you know that 1 in 3 adults in the US has prediabetes and 9 out of 10 don't know they have it? Prediabetes is when your blood sugar levels are higher than normal, but not yet high enough to be diagnosed as type 2 diabetes. The goal of this three-part series is to bring awareness to prediabetes and discuss realistic steps that you can take to lower your risk of type 2 diabetes and other chronic disease, and to have a little fun. So tonight for session 1 of our series, next slide, please. We'll hear about a principle of healthy living through a shopping for health talk. We've got Melee who's joining us to present that. Melee works for Tooele County Health Department on their health promotion team as a health educator. She received her bachelor's in public health from Brigham Young University, Idaho. She's also a lifestyle coach for the National Diabetes Prevention Program. And then Natalie will introduce us to a lifestyle change program, the National Diabetes Prevention Program. Natalie works for the Utah Department of Health's Healthy Environments Active Living Program. She received her master's in public health from the University of Utah and is a lifestyle coach and master trainer for the National Diabetes Prevention Program. And then we will turn it over to Cindy and Tricia from Utah State University Extension to have a live cooking demonstration. And Tricia, do you want to take a minute just to say hello from Utah State University Extension? Maybe they can't hear us quite
Hi,
yet.
it's good to be with all of you tonight.
Great. All right. Without any further ado, I will turn it over to Melee. She'll find her mute button.
Sorry, there I go. I'm sorry about that. But thank you, Rebecca, and welcome to all of you on today's webinar. We are excited to have you here, and we're excited to share some information with you and share more about shopping for health. So next slide. Thanks. First off, this portion of the session, we will be focusing on different ways we can shop for and cook healthy foods to help prevent type 2 diabetes, such as, sorry, the next slide. Yes, here we go. So such as how to shop for healthy foods. We'll also go over a little bit about planning for our meals, putting together a shopping list, healthy shopping tips. We'll also go over healthy cooking tips. And at the end, a call to action where you can take a moment at the end of the session to think of what you're going to do differently today to shop and cook for healthier food. So I know it can be hard to shop for healthy food or cook healthy food, but I also know that it's possible with the right resources and tools. So for example, let's look here at Jerry's story. So we see here that Jerry's mother has type 2 diabetes. He wants to avoid getting it, so he's trying to eat more healthy. He realizes as he goes out with his mother that she is always buying a lot of healthy food. Jerry's main obstacle that he is facing, and I know some of us face this too, is how expensive it is. He asks his mother how she can afford all of this healthy food, and she goes and she shares a few simple suggestions that's helped her not only save money as she's gone out to go shop for healthier food, but also save time. And so these tips included, she would gather coupons for healthy items. She'll look at what's on sale at local grocery stores. She's also planned out her meals and snacks for the week. She checks what's in her kitchen to see what she has before obviously going out to do grocery shopping. She puts together a shopping list, so prepares herself before going out, and then also has a healthy snack. So with these tips, Jerry decided to try this way that his mom does, try the way that his mom goes out shopping, and realizes how much time and money he saved while shopping, as well as cooking healthy food. So a point that was mentioned that I think is so important to obviously get the most of your shopping trip is to prepare even before you get to the grocery store. These are great tips that Jerry's mother had used that we can all use to help us to just be as successful when it comes to cooking healthy foods, as well as shopping for healthy foods. So as Jerry went out and did that, he was able to see he was saving more time as well as saving more money. And so if any of you who are joining in have any other ideas or suggestions that you've been able to use to, shop for healthier food, please feel free, share them in the question and answer boxes for everyone else. But these are just a few other tips that you can use to make your trip to the store more successful. So obviously, to be prepared before shopping, this is where the planning comes into play. So we see that one of the suggestions that Jerry's mother had shared with him was the importance of planning her meals for the week, as well as putting together a shopping list to prepare herself before going to the grocery store. So this will definitely help each and every one of you save time, be prepared, as well as avoid buying extra unnecessary items. I definitely can be guilty of that, as well as keep to your meal plan for the week. So here are just an example of Jerry's meal plan and shopping list that he's put together. I know from experience, when I don't put together a shopping list, I tend to wander off in aisles that I'm more tempted to buy things that are not on my list, as well as I definitely don't stick to what my meal plan is for the week. But just how it's laid out, he has, his days, he has specific meals that he has set out. Let's see, for Monday, he has for breakfast, oatmeal, strawberries, coffee with skim milk. And so just like one of the suggestions that Jerry's mother had mentioned is not only put together your meals, your meal plan, put together a shopping list, but also make sure you check what you have in your refrigerator or in the kitchen before you go out to the store. That will definitely help you to keep to your meal plan that you have for the week and avoid buying any unnecessary items. So these are just different ways that you can I guess, apply to help you when it comes to, you know, cooking more healthier foods, as well as shopping for healthier foods that, and make it more affordable. And so obviously, once you have all your meals planned and a shopping list put together, it's time to finally go out and do your shopping. So here are some fun tips and ideas to help you go out and, I guess, shop for healthier food. So we have some ideas that you can do before you shop, as well as during or after you shop. So we already had gone through the importance of checking your kitchen, see what you have before you go out to the store. That will help you, obviously, you know, to have your list ready. Make a list of items that you need for meals and snacks you plan. And that's where it comes with the meal planning. When you put together your meal plan, you'll definitely know the things that you do have and you don't have before you go out into the store. You know, same thing with planning your meals and snacks for the week. Think about different sales that are available in your local grocery stores, the different coupons that might be available for healthy items, as well as like looking at different recipes that you want to try. You may not have those ingredients at home, so those are things that you can prepare and add onto your shopping list. As well as the last tip on this one is have a healthy snack, so you won't get too hungry. This will help you make more healthy choices. I know that when I go to the grocery store and I'm shopping for groceries and I haven't had a meal or a snack, I tend to overbuy and end up buying things that are probably not the best choice for me. But I've also seen the difference when I go after having a healthy snack or a healthy meal, that I'm able to stick more to the list that I have prepared. And then kind of like what you can do, you know, during or while you're shopping is you can, you know, use food labels to help you choose more healthy items. Obviously, stick to your list, stay away from aisles that may tempt you. Also, another good thing that I think is like, you know, choosing family packs, store brands and sale items. These definitely often cost less than I guess vice versa, or the ones that I guess are not more store brands. Another tip that you can also apply is avoid prepared meals like canned soup, from frozen dinners. The food that you can cook yourself often costs less and is a lot more healthier for you. Oh, sorry, next slide. Okay, and so obviously once you have all your groceries and your meals planned, it's time for, I guess, my favorite part, the best part, which is cooking healthy food. So here are some healthy cooking tips, and these tips will help you cook more healthy without having to spend a lot of money. And most importantly, you can also cook healthy food that you can actually enjoy. And so different tips and suggestions with that include, you know, cutting up your veggies and your fruit in advance. Store them in your fridge or your freezer. This would definitely help you save time when it comes to putting a meal together and everything like that. If you're in a rush to get to work or to the gym or whatever it may be. Obviously, going back to planning, making meals and snacks that you planned out for the week, as well as using any leftover veggies and meats that you may have. It could go into like an omelet for breakfast, you know, pasta for lunch, a rice dish for, you know, for dinner. All of this can definitely help you, you know, save money as well as time. And then also cooking in, you know, in larger batches. This will allow you to help, you know, have some items that are, you know, frozen in the refrigerator that you could just grab quickly if you're in a rush to get anywhere, and, you know, prep it for your family or for yourself. And that would definitely help you save time. And then we have more tips on the next slide. Another one that's, you know, that's really good is, you know, changing up your favorite dishes to make them more healthier. You know, I definitely love a good juicy burger, but I know that there are other options that you can have it, you know, instead of having, you know, the bun, you can change it to, you know, lettuce instead of the bun. So there's, you know, there's different ways that you can change your favorite meals and make it more healthier for you, but also, you know, using smaller portions can definitely help you, you know, help you on saving money as well as time. You can also choose, different items with variety of flavors, colors, and scents, and whatnot to help you to enjoy your food a little bit more, as well as dressing up your food with different spices, herbs, and everything like that. Obviously, making sure we're keeping to our healthcare providers' recommendations on that, but they can definitely help you when it comes to enjoying your food, your, I guess, healthier food. And same thing, if you have any cooking tips or suggestions that I haven't mentioned and definitely works for you, like, yes, again, feel free to share it in the Q&A box for everyone else. And so lastly, just kind of a call to action. So I know that, you have all this good information and we'll also continue to receive lots more information the rest of this evening. I just invite everyone, take a moment at the end of today's session and just think of what you are going to do differently today to shop as well as cook healthier food. These are definitely great tips and information that I've seen have worked not only in my life, but in life of other individuals who have joined the National Diabetes Prevention Program. And I know as you find what works best for you, that you will see the difference and eventually meet your health goals. So thank you. And now I will turn the time over to Natalie.
Thank you, Maylee. I am with you. I do always enjoy a good burger, and I do appreciate all those tips that you gave us for how to shop for healthy food. I know for me, my grocery bill is a lot lower when I make a list and actually stick to it. Good evening, everyone. I'm Natalie Klein. As Rebecca mentioned earlier, I work for the Utah Department of Health in the Healthy Environments Active Living Program. Next slide. So I only have one objective for tonight, and that is, I'm hoping in the few moments that we have together that I can offer you the information you need in order to answer the question, what is the National Diabetes Prevention Program? Next slide. So before I can give you the answer, I need to take you back in history to 1996, the very beginnings of the National Diabetes Prevention Program. In 1996, the National Institutes of Health began a random control study evaluating the effectiveness of lifestyle change versus medication on the incidence of type 2 diabetes on individuals who are at an increased risk of developing type 2. All the people in the study were overweight and had a prediabetes diagnosis. Almost half of the participants were from minority groups who are at an increased risk of developing type 2 diabetes. There were over 3,000 participants, and they came from all over the US. They were randomly divided into 3 different treatment groups. Everyone in the study prior to randomization received general information about healthy eating and physical activity. One of the treatment groups received the drug metformin. Another group received the lifestyle intervention, which focused on a coaching support to assist participants in achieving a modest weight loss and increasing their physical activity. They also set the goal to lose 7% of their body weight. And the third and final group was the control group, and they received the placebo. Next slide. So after approximately 3 years of the DPP research study, the researchers found that lifestyle intervention group sharply reduced their chances of developing type 2 diabetes. You can see in this graphic or graph that the cumulative incidence of diabetes is lower in the lifestyle group when compared to the groups that received metformin and the placebo. And what's interesting is this finding held true for all participants regardless of gender, age, race, or socioeconomic status. Next slide. Back one. Thanks, Manny. The DPP research group published their findings in 2002. Overall, the lifestyle group reduced their risk of developing type 2 diabetes by 58% as compared to the placebo group. For participants who were 60 and older, the findings were even more dramatic. This group reduced their risk by a total of 71%. The metformin group also reduced their risk by 31% compared to the placebo group, demonstrating that the use of metformin when compared to lifestyle intervention is only half as effective at reducing the risk of developing type 2 diabetes. And what we can really learn and take home from this DPP research study is that millions of people with prediabetes can cut their risk of developing type 2 in half through lifestyle change and modest weight loss. Next slide. Oh, perfect. We're nearing the end of this history lesson because in 2010, the National Diabetes Prevention Program was created by Congress to address the growing problem of prediabetes and type 2 diabetes in the US. Some of you may remember that Rebecca earlier said that 1 in 3 adults have prediabetes and nearly 90% of them don't know that they even have it. That's a huge problem. And that's about 88 million Americans who are at risk of developing diabetes that don't even know that they're at risk. So the National Diabetes Prevention Program is designed to help those individuals by either preventing or delaying the onset of type 2 diabetes. It's a CDC-recognized program, and as we learned through history, it's evidence-based. The class itself is facilitated by trained lifestyle coaches who help participants set goals to lose 5 to 7% of their body weight and increase their physical activity levels to at least 150 minutes per week. Next slide. In order to participate in the class, a person needs to meet certain eligibility criteria. A person has to be an adult, so they have to be at least 18 years of age. They have to be overweight. They cannot have a previous diagnosis of type 1 or type 2 diabetes. There's actually a self-management program we'll talk about in a future Food is Medicine webinar that helps individuals who already have a diabetes diagnosis, so stay tuned for that session. The person cannot be currently pregnant. So in addition to those 4 criteria, a person has to meet one of the following. So either they have to have a blood test diagnosing them with prediabetes, they have to have been diagnosed with gestational diabetes during a previous pregnancy, or score 5 or higher on a prediabetes risk assessment. And you'll actually receive the risk assessment later, so be sure to check out what your score is after this webinar. Next slide. The National DPP is structured as a year-long lifestyle change program where groups of eligible participants meet together at least 22 times over the course of a year. They meet 16 times during the first 6 months and a minimum of 6 times during the second 6 months. The curriculum focuses on healthy eating and how to increase physical activity. And on the next slide, I actually have some examples of the lessons lifestyle coaches facilitate throughout the year. So a number of the lessons center around getting active and how to eat well to prevent type 2 diabetes. Other lessons focus on stress management and even how to get back on track when we hit a bump in the road in our journey to prevent diabetes. I think we all can relate. The behavior change is hard, whether it's the first time we're trying to adopt new habits or our 50th time trying to improve our eating. We know it's not easy. One lesson specifically focuses on how to take charge of our thoughts and helps us identify those negative triggers that might derail our progress. Not only do we identify them, but we work together as a class to brainstorm strategies on how to overcome those thoughts and get back on track. I think one of the things that sets apart the National DPP is the element of group support. We meet together for an entire year. That's a really long time. You get to know the people in your class really well, and you want to see one another succeed. You also have the support of a lifestyle coach who will cheer you on and provide resources throughout the journey to help support you. Next slide. So CDC has a number of stories and videos from previous participants on their website. I actually wanted to share a quote from a participant who lives and attended one of the programs in Utah. So here's the quote. Just before beginning the NDPP program, I was on a trajectory to be diabetic. My dad had just lost a leg from type 2 diabetes. I weighed nearly 320 pounds and my A1C was 0.1 away from an official diagnosis. I was scared. The program taught me where I needed to make changes in my diet. These were things I already pretty well knew, but it was good to have them reinforced. It also got me into a more active lifestyle, which was almost exactly opposite from my sedentary life had been. Finally, the program provided tools and support to help me on a path to becoming healthier. 6 months into the program, I had lost 60 pounds and my A1C had gone from 6.3 down to 5.5. I'm confident that the things I learned by participating in the NDPP program have literally saved my life, or at least allowed me to live into old age with a much higher quality of life. If you're thinking about participating in the program, I would say go for it. I think that's a pretty incredible endorsement of the program. This is just one example of many of people who have changed their lifestyles for the better and in turn reduce their risk of developing type 2 diabetes. Next slide. In Utah, we've actually had almost 6,500 people participate in the National DPP over the last 6 years. In 2015, that's when Utah had our first official program at the University of Utah. Right now, we currently have 28 organizations offering the program, which includes 2 of our health systems, many of our local health departments, and a handful of community-based organizations. We have programs that offer it both online and in person. Insurance coverage is limited in our state, but we do have a number of insurance companies offering some level of coverage at select locations. If you have one of the listed insurance providers, my advice would be to call up your insurance and see if you have coverage of the program and where you could attend a class. Next slide. So I wanted to leave you with a few resources that you can go to learn more. 2 of our health systems have short videos on their websites that give you more information about prediabetes and the national DPP. University of Utah's videos are called Just the Facts, and Intermountain Healthcare offers a Prediabetes 101 course. Both of the websites have information available in English and Spanish. I mentioned earlier, I'm a part of the Healthy Environments Active Living program. Our website has a list of all the organizations offering the national DPP, as well as contact information. For some of the organizations, you can actually register for their classes directly through our website. Next slide. So thank you for giving me a few minutes to talk about a program that is really important to me. Rebecca mentioned earlier that I am a lifestyle coach. For a few years, I got to see the firsthand the impact of the program has not only on the participants, but also the people they live and work with. Participants shared the changes that they were making in class to improve their lifestyle, but also shared with friends, family, coworkers, the lifestyle changes that can help prevent a very costly condition. This is a list of my references. Please submit any questions you may have, and we'll do our best to answer them at the end. Thank you.
Thank you, Melee and Natalie. And before we begin the cooking segment, I just want to remind everyone to continue to submit questions. Thank you for those who already have. But you can use the Q&A box to submit those questions. And Melee, Natalie, and our chefs will answer some of the most popular ones at the end of the cooking demonstration. So I know that some people worry about being able to cook meals that taste good, and maybe it's too hard or complicated. Melee talked about that as well. The good news is that it doesn't have to be. Cindy and Trisha, the chefs from University of Utah Extension, are here to show us how to make a white bean stew to get started. And we'll share the link to this recipe and others. Manny will send that out through the chat, and we'll also include it again in the follow-up email that you'll receive after this event. So Trisha and Cindy, maybe you want to just say hello for a second, introduce yourselves, and maybe USU Extension for those of the folks who aren't familiar.
Hello, yes, of course. Hi, okay, I'm Cindy with Utah State University Extension. I'm over home and community here in Utah County. That's where we're based out of tonight. And we're really excited to bring this recipe to you.
And I'm Trisha Mathis, and I'm in the home and community department as well. But I'm in Wasatch County, so just came down the canyon tonight. So it's good to be with all of you.
Thanks for joining us, and feel free to get started whenever you're ready.
Okay, we're ready to go. Thank you. All right. So this is a white bean stew recipe that I found a few years ago. And I really love this recipe because it's heartwarming, especially during those cold months. It's really healthy. I was kind of looking around for something that would fit that criteria and be easy. So I found it on health.com, and we've got the recipe to share with you, of course. And I just love how it helps my body feel good. It's got lots of veggies and fiber in it. And like I said, it's easy. So that's really nice. I did make a few tweaks to the recipe just because I did that for my preferences, which is really fun. So first thing I did is I added a teaspoon of garlic powder to the recipe just to add a little bit of extra flavor. And then for the oregano that it calls for fresh, and I substituted that for 1 teaspoon of dried oregano. And I like that because it also adds a little bit of easiness to it, so that way you don't have to go find fresh. And then the dried is just super easy to pull out of your cupboard. Another addition that might be nice just to add a little bit of extra flavor, especially because we do recommend that you go easy on the salt here, is to add a pinch of thyme. That can add a little bit of extra flavor there. So we do recommend that you use a low sodium vegetable broth in there, and that you just cut the salt out of the recipe. Or this is like a no sodium vegetable broth, so maybe add just a teensy bit of salt to it, and then your other flavors. So that's what we recommend for some little tweaks.
All right, So we're going to begin making the recipe by cutting up the veggies. We have carrots, we have celery, we have onion, we have kale. And so we're just going to use a whole carrot tonight. I like to cut off the ends. If you would like to use like baby carrots, they're already washed and cut, you could just dice them into little rounds and that would work as well. But what I like to do when I am cutting vegetables, like on the carrot, I like to cut it in half and then I have a flat side to lay on my cutting board and then it's not moving around. I also like to use a sharp knife. It makes all the difference just to have a nice knife to use when you're cutting.
Yeah, we made sure these knives were super sharp tonight.
When we practiced, it wasn't so sharp.
No.
So the
For
right
sure.
tool for the job is important. We all know that, right? Okay, so you can just cut it in half, or if you want to cut it in thirds or quarters, it depends on how big you want those pieces. What is important about cutting your vegetables is to get them all consistent at a consistent size. So if you can see the carrots and the celery, they're all small little dices. As we were cutting, Cindy liked to cut them a little bit bigger, and she said that she liked cutting them bigger because it didn't take as long. So, and I said, well, this is how my mom did it. So anyway, really, if you're just consistent, it's all good. So get your carrot cut. And so these are a little bit bigger. Or if you even wanted to cut thin rounds, you're welcome to do that too. All right. Now we'll move on to the onion. So I've peeled it and I've chopped off each end. Now I'm going to use one of those flat ends to cut in half. All right. So now 2 halves. I'm going to take 1 half. Let me turn a little bit. And I'm going to make, about a 1/4 inch slices. If you want to dice them a little bigger, like 1/2 inch, you could do that. Just kind of be consistent with your other pieces. If you're cutting your carrot and celery a little bigger, then you can cut your onion a little bigger. Okay, so I've sliced that way. Then I'm going to come back this direction, and this will get my dice. So I'll cut all the way to the end. When you get to the end, it gets a little difficult, but there we go. So there's our dice, and then you could do the other, calls for 1 onion, do the other half as well. For the celery, I like to cut off each end. And then, depending on how big you like the dice, sometimes I cut it in 4, depending on how big the celery is too. If it's a bigger piece of celery, I'll cut it in 4, but then once you get to the center, they get smaller, and then maybe just cutting in half is enough. It's important as well to keep them all consistent size so that they'll cook all at the same rate. Instead of having a big chunk of celery and then a little chunk, try to keep them pretty consistent. Okay, and then we'll just go through, cut down. And I believe this calls for 1 stalk of celery.
It does,
Am I
about 1
correct?
cup.
Okay, so if it's a small, you might want to do another piece of celery. Okay, so this is the kale. This we have bought just in like a bundle with lots of leaves. And if that's the case, we want to trim. I like to just fold it in half. Can you see how that is done? And then trim that kind of core part out. It's kind of tough and we really don't want to eat that. But I'll trim that part out, and then I'm left with the leaf part, and a little bit fell off, but I don't want this huge piece. I'm going to just cut it a couple directions. And then you've got it chopped. One thing I like about kale, if you buy, well, even this, you can do the same thing, but if you buy the big bags that are already pre-washed, pre-cut, you can freeze that. So sometimes it's hard to get through that huge bag, but if you freeze it, then it works really well for soups or other hot dishes. Maybe not as well to put back in a salad because it changes texture a little bit. But I love when I make soups just to have, you know, even just little individual bags ready to go that I can pull out and throw in a soup. And I always have it. And it's just that extra nutrition. So should we get started?
Okay, let's
Cooking?
get started. And thank you, Trish. I love your dicing. It's beautiful. And Trish actually gave that little piece of advice to me as well a few weeks ago about freezing things. And I was like, oh, how did I not think about that? That's amazing advice. Okay, and just so you know, here I'm going to get started with our cooking. I do have some veggies that are already sauteed here for us as an example in a minute, just so you know that I'm working with 2 pots, but I'm going to get started in this back one to show you what we'll do first. So I'm going to get my oil here and just pour it in a pan. That's what we'll do to get started. And then for this recipe, this is another tweak that I did is I actually got the carrots and put them in first. I like to do that just because when you do that, it gives like a little bit of a caramelization on the carrots. And it just makes for a really nice flavor with everything. Okay.
Let me add that it's olive oil we're using.
Mhm.
So try to use, you know, a healthier oil.
Yeah, olive oil or canola, those are both really healthy ones. So what I would do is I just let this simmer for about, or saute for about 3 minutes while I'm chopping up the onion. That's what I would do if I were at home. So we're just gonna pretend that that's what I did. Just a few minutes have passed and then I will go ahead and add the onion. Put that in there and let it saute for a couple minutes while I chop the celery. And so that way I'm kind of using my time nicely as well to get things done. Another time saver on this that you can do if you want. I like to prep everything fresh, but if you're thinking, oh, I might not have time on the day where I'm doing this, you might say, okay, well, I'm gonna chop all my veggies the day beforehand, put them in the fridge and pull them out when I want to get started. That's just fine as well. Okay, so if I were at home, I'd saute this for a minute, chop up my celery and let that simmer, saute again for a few minutes and then put this one in. Okay, move that around. Let it saute for another 5 minutes or so. Depends on how thick you cut your vegetables, like how I like to cut mine a little bit bigger because things move a little bit faster for me that way. Then I might keep this on there for another 6 to 8 minutes. But as we've cut our veggies pretty small tonight, we might do this for another 4 or 5 minutes since all the other veggies have had a few minutes in here to saute. But what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to transfer over to this pot, give this one to Trish. Okay, thank you. And I'm going to show you our already sauteed veggies. So these ones are really nicely sauteed. They're all in there. They look really good.
And use a medium, like a medium heat. If you go too high, that's going to burn too fast and not cook all the way through. So we suggest just do a medium heat, be patient, and let them kind of do their thing.
And then what I'll do next is, and sometimes what might happen as well is when you're cooking this, it might brown just a little bit on the bottom, because what we're going to do now is add all of our spices and we're going to move our heat up to that medium high heat. I had it just on low because I was waiting for I was doing our other demo. Okay, I'm adding all of our spices now. So it's a tablespoon of cumin and that teaspoon of garlic that I told you about. And then lastly, the teaspoon of oregano. Then I will mix these together nicely. Oh, thank you, Trish. Okay, so that they look well mixed, all of those spices. And now what I'm going to do is put in the cannellini beans. Hand this to you again.
Sure.
Oh, thank you. All right. And now, and I hope I'm loud enough here as well, because this can get just a little bit loud as it's cooking. And as I mix this around, you want to do this for just about 3 minutes until all of those flavors mix together and get, they call it aromatic. So it has a nice fragrance to it. You can smell it a little bit. And we'll let this cook for a few minutes. And while that happens, while that's going on, what can happen is you can get a little bit of browning on the bottom of your pan, and I'll show you how to take care of that in a minute. What happens is, because that actually will add a good amount of flavor to what you're cooking. And then we do this. And again, we're going to say that a few minutes have passed. And so probably what you'll see at home is, like I said, is that little bit of browning on the bottom. It's called caramelization. And then when you add your liquid, you'll scrape that off the bottom, and it will add a wonderful flavor to your food. It'll be really nice. You can hear that cooking. And then you're going to add 4 cups of your vegetable broth. Since this is already packaged in a 32-ounce package, we're just going to pour this whole thing. That is 4 cups. So we're going to pour the whole thing in there into our pot here. And like I said, now I can see that it's starting to stick on the bottom a little bit, all of our spices and the oil, and that's just fine. That's a great thing to have happen, because like I said, it'll add that extra flavor to what you're making. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and pour this in.
Now, one thing you may want to do with the broth is heat it up. So if you'd want to pour it into a bowl, put it in the microwave, heat it up a little bit. That kind of helps this next step not take so long to get back to a boil. So if you're in a little bit of hurry or don't want it all to cool back down by adding the cold broth, just heat it up in a little bit, or in a pan or in the microwave. We've noticed that helps a lot.
Right, because I'll turn it up to high heat, but it'll still take a few minutes. So that's great advice, a great tip from Trish. If you want it to just go boom, boom, boom really fast, you can heat that up in the microwave. It'll make things move even faster. So I'm gonna let this sit here for a minute, and as soon as it comes to a boil, then I will turn down the heat just slightly. Right now it is on high. So as soon as it comes to a boil, I'll turn it down to a medium heat and just let it simmer for about 6 minutes. And then we'll get ready to put in our quinoa and our kale. And while we're waiting for that, I'm going to let Trish tell you a little bit about all the different things that we're doing here with the quinoa and the kale.
Okay. So do you want me to tell about?
Do you want me to
What
talk
is good?
about the?
Okay, we looked up like just some health benefits of the quinoa and kale. I think they were both kind of called superfoods at some point. Correct me if I'm wrong, someone on. But kale is great for the digestive system. It's high in iron and vitamin K, A, and C, and calcium. And has lots of antioxidants. So really beneficial food health-wise. Really nutrient dense. And then the quinoa is another nutrient dense. It's gluten-free. Those of you who are concerned about gluten, it's high in protein, and it's one of the few plants that you can eat that has sufficient amounts of the 9 essential amino acids. And it's also a good source of fiber. So love adding these along with the beans and the vegetables, just a really nutrient dense soup that we love.
That's what I loved about it. Thank you for talking about that, Trish. And that's again what I was looking for. As I said, that's kind of why this is a really good, not only heartwarming food that you can eat in the wintertime, but it's also it makes your body feel really good because it has all those healthy things in it, all those nutrient dense foods. And then that makes your whole meal very nutrient dense, and that'll just help your body run really, really well.
Just comfort food, right?
Comfort
food at its best.
Comfort food in the healthy way.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. Do you want to add those now, or do you want me to talk about Instapot directions?
Do you want to talk about the Instapot directions? I'm going to let this go for just a few more minutes.
For those of you who like using an Instapot, just really easy to change a little bit. So it'd be the same thing, just use your pot to saute the vegetables and then add your cumin, what are they called? Spices.
The
Spices.
Yes.
I lose words when I get in front of people. Add your spices, kind of do the same thing, that sauteing, all the sauteing, add your beans. And then at that point, you can add your beans, your broth, your kale and quinoa. And then put it in the Instapot. The Instapot takes a while to get to temperature, so it is cooking a little bit until it gets to that temperature, that pressure, where it starts counting down. So we say like about 5 minutes will work. And then another like 5 to 10 minutes, let it sit, and then do your quick release. And then when it's finished releasing the pressure, then you can open it and it will be done. So I guess the advantage of the Instapot is that you can kind of put it aside, put the lid on, let it do its thing, and you don't have to sit and stir, you know, kind of babysit it. I don't know that it's much faster, but it does have that advantage where you can just lock the lid and let it do its thing. This soup also freezes well. So if you have leftovers, if you're making this for yourself or just you and your spouse or significant other, it's a lot, and maybe you don't want leftovers for the next 3 or 4 days. I would
Always a nice
just,
thing.
yeah, I mean, you can do that too, but if you want to freeze a little bit, I would suggest freeze it in the amount that you are going to be using. So I wouldn't pour the whole thing in a container and freeze it, and then when you want to eat it, you're like, oh, I have to take the whole thing out. I would freeze it in either single servings, or if there are 2 of you eating, in 2 servings, and then it is a lot easier to defrost and get heated up again. So that's my tip for that. And it can keep in the freezer probably 3 or 4 months. So if you use it within that time, you should be good.
Okay, all right. So this has been simmering for just a few minutes here, and we're going to go ahead and add our quinoa and kale, and then we'll show you the finished product. Okay, so let me just want to pour that quinoa in nice and easy, stir it around. That looks very nice. I hope you can see that here in our big camera. Looks beautiful. Another thing with the kale, it does call for a cup of kale. I think because this recipe, when you make it and the kale sits in there for a long time, I know kale is kind of a bitter vegetable. It's a really bitter leafy green. However, when it sits in here for 15 minutes for the simmering, you put the lid on, you let it simmer for 15 minutes. And then what it does is it adds a lot of flavor to that kale. So I actually add a lot of kale. I'll add probably 2 to 3 cups of kale just because I think it tastes really good. Since it's cooked in here, it's nice, it's flavorful, and that's what I do. But now I'm going to put the lid on really fast.
You want me to show them the finished?
Okay, well, let me hurry and put this on.
Okay.
And then what you do is just turn it down to low heat, probably about 2 or 3 if it's numbered. And then you let that sit for 15 minutes. And so here's what it looks like. It's all nice and ready to go. Yeah, you can see in our
Just a hearty soup.
very
That's what it
hearty
looks like.
soup. All of the quinoa has cooked really nicely. Like I said, that kale, you can see it's wilted very nicely in the soup, in the stew, and it looks beautiful where it's all cooked together, and it's a nice hearty warm meal for you. There you go. Hope you enjoy it.
Thanks for watching.
Wonderful. Thank you, Cindy and Trisha. I don't know about anyone else, but I got hungry just watching them do all the cooking. It sounds like a great recipe. So now we're going to take a minute, and I'm going to have Cindy and Trisha and Melee and Natalie and Pam join us for the Q&A session. We've got some great questions that have come into the Q&A box. So keep those coming as we start to answer questions. As just a reminder, if we don't get to all of the questions live, we will be sending a follow-up email with some answers to some of the other questions. So our first question for our panelists is Is it okay to buy food at the dollar store?
So I guess I'll help answer that, but if you guys have any other suggestions or tips, please jump in. But yeah, I think it's fine to buy food at the dollar store. I mean, we understand that, you know, sometimes it's more financially affordable for others versus going to like Whole Foods or anything like that. But I mean, you know, just making sure, I did kind of mention, you know, learning how to, you know, read your food labels, just to make sure that, you know, the different types of food that you do purchase at the dollar store does meet your nutrient goals or what you're looking for, nutrient wise. But I do think it's fine to shop at the dollar store, but, you know, don't forget that, you know, with your local grocery stores, you know, there are coupons that are available. There are always, you know, sales that are available too when it comes to, you know, fresh produce and everything like that. But once again, you know, it is understandable that not everyone can be able to meet that financially and or don't even have other stores but the dollar store available. But yeah, I think it's fine too. Anyone else have any other suggestions or comments for that?
I have one. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
I'm looking to our camera guy. I know when you eat food at the dollar store, it can be very accessible. That can be really nice and easy to do that. Something to keep in mind though is that in the long run, it may actually be more expensive to purchase food from the dollar store. And in that way, it's kind of the catch-22 of it may be very accessible, but in the long run, because you are buying things that are not in bulk, the price actually can be a little bit higher that way. So if you can, I'd say get to those larger grocery stores and buy things in bulk. If not, the dollar store is definitely a good option.
Awesome.
Perfect. Thanks so much.
Yeah. For our next question, we have, is there a source of menu plans, particularly vegetarian, that are healthy to get started?
Okay, I have an answer for that one as well, or is somebody else trying to answer?
Oh, I can try and just chime in real quick. A great website, I think, is the Diabetes Food Hub. It's by the American Diabetes Association. And what's really great about that website is you can really search by the type of food that you're looking for. If you're looking for vegan or vegetarian, if you need lactose-free, if you need gluten-free, it can really narrow down while still being able to find some really healthy recipes.
Okay, and I'll add a little tidbit there as well. That was an awesome suggestion. And I know that we all love Pinterest, and it may not have, you may have to just look at your recipes with a sharp eye to make sure that is exactly what you need. But I found that that's really easy as well, because they have a nice search engine and people are generally very good about adding recipes that are good. But I would just add that caveat of make sure you're really examining those recipes, because a website like the American Diabetes Association, everything will be perfectly in order for what you search for. On Pinterest, you'll have to really look and make sure, okay, I did a search for this, and is it actually what I need? But you can find many, many recipes on there.
So our next question is there a substitute that I can use to reduce the amount of oil or fat called for in a recipe? So we have some cooks that are trying to make some healthy changes. Any suggestions for what they might be able to do to reduce the amount of oil or fat?
I mean, you can reduce, it calls for 2 tablespoons. So you could reduce that, but it's a healthy fat. So I don't know, I wouldn't be too concerned about it. Are you talking like what we made tonight, or?
I think probably the question is like in general, when you are reading a recipe and it calls for oil or fat, if there are any substitutions.
There's one thing I do like to do in baked goods. On some recipes, you can replace the oil with applesauce. And I like to do that, especially with like a banana nut bread or a pumpkin bread or cake or an apple, something that already has those fruits in it that are similar. It works really well. I'm actually doing a class tomorrow with an apple cake, and I reduced the oil just down to a fraction of what it called for and put the applesauce in. And it's probably better. Like it tastes so good. So you can do that. Sometimes yogurts or things like that you can and substitute to in baked goods.
Okay, we'll just ask one more question and then finish up on these. Is there any chance a small amount of dark chocolate is acceptable to help curb that sweet tooth desire? I hear it's actually healthy, but I question that. Any insight on that one?
I'll go ahead and jump in on that one. Of course, moderation is key. We never want to deprive ourselves and not have any of our favorite things. Part of all of this, especially with preventing type 2 diabetes, is learning how to do something that you can sustain for the rest of your life. A lot of us don't want to go without chocolate for the rest of our life, and keeping those small portions, whether you're buying really good chocolate and making it really worth it, like something like a Ghirardelli's or something that's your favorite, and having it, pre-portioned in small portions. So you're just having a little bit, or it's putting some of it in the freezer. So you just really have to wait for it to melt a little bit, and you can really enjoy it. So for sure, yes, go for that little piece of dark chocolate.
Excellent. Thank you to everyone for the great questions and to all of our panelists for the answers. Just as a reminder, anything that wasn't answered will be answered in a follow-up email after this. And then I'll go ahead and turn the time back over to Rebecca.
Great, thank you. And Manny, I'll let you get the slides back up and just give you in these final minutes here some ideas of next steps that you can take. If you're interested in learning more about how you can live well and reduce your risk of type 2 diabetes, consider taking a 60-second risk test to assess your risk of developing type 2 diabetes. And you can visit the Healthy Environments Active Living Program website to find National Diabetes Prevention Program classes near you. I know we've given you a lot of links and resources through this webinar tonight, and we'll include links to all of these things in the follow-up email that you'll receive. So I'm afraid we're about out of time. I want to say thank you very much for joining us. We hope you enjoyed tonight's event. As I've mentioned a couple times, you should receive a follow-up email no later than 2 weeks. We hope to get it out to you sooner than that. If you don't receive it, be sure to check your junk mail or your spam folder in case it went there. The webinar recording will be posted on the CoMagine Health YouTube channel. You'll receive a link to that. And once this webinar ends, a brief survey will launch on your screen. We would really appreciate your feedback on tonight's event. It's really helpful in our planning for future events like these. Finally, I want to say thank you to Melee, Natalie, Cindy, and Trisha. Thanks, Pam, for jumping in on questions with Ellen and Britta. Thanks tonight for a great presentation and cooking demonstration. And we hope to see you again at a future event.
Is it off?